part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Hawks POSTCAST, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is DeShaun Tate. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Locked On Hawks POSTCAST is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Hawks traveled to the nation's capital for what was supposed to be a get-back game. Not so much, DeShaun, not so much, with a 133-120 loss to the Wizards. So you said for you, the take on the game was, where's the pride?
Sometimes all I can do, Tenitra, is just sit back and laugh. I thought the guys
laugh instead of crying.
The guys heard me the other night. Like, I went on this whole rant. Usually this works. I feel like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the guys heard me. I'm like, I'm that kind of fan. I'm like, all right, they put it together. Listen to me more often, kind of thing. And it feels like they did the complete opposite. You know, you were supposed to go out there, have some pride about yourself, realize that you're playing the Washington Wizards. You know, not reading the name on the front of the jersey. They may have had a one-up on you just however that happened the other night, but you're supposed to just kind of go back to the drawing board, not kind of make you feel like you're kind of like going through the motions. The sad part about this is, Tenitra, is that I don't even know that this is the last time that we're going to see something like this against a team this bad. Or how about this young? This is the youngest starting lineup that this team has had in franchise history, starting I think 3 rookies, 1 second-year guy named Coulibaly, who looks like this is his 22nd year, and then Jordan Poole, who was the leader of all guys. Yes, I said Jordan Poole and leader in the same sentence, and then went out there and beat the Atlanta Hawks. I definitely have my own narrative about how I would run practice on tomorrow if I was the coach. And I even wrote some stuff down here in my handy dandy notebook on how I would do so. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you before I dive into that.
Okay. Well, the only thing I would want to see them do tomorrow is go to the free throw line and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until the basket is feeling like an ocean, to be honest, because that to me is a part of what was a head scratcher and kind of what my take ended up being for tonight's Hawks Wizards game. I felt like the Hawks didn't actually concede much, but they still lost. And what I mean by that is this: when you look at the team stats, right? You look at the field goal percentage. Okay, 47% Hawks, 53% Wizards. Not too shabby. Now we'll come back to that 3-point line in a minute and that free throw line in a minute. Rebounds, the Hawks actually out-rebounded the Wizards, and the assists were even, steals were dead even. Blocks were in the Wizards' favor. The reason I'm going down this, and then the points, actually, let me mention that. Fast break points were in favor of the Wizards. Points in the paint were in favor of the Hawks. Now, why do I go back and mention the 3-point line? Okay, you look at how the Hawks did there, 30%. 30% is what they shot from 3. 42% is what the Wizards shot from 3. Now, their free throw percentage actually went up somehow. And I think it's because they did play a little bit more in the paint in the fourth quarter, at least for a little bit. But we'll talk about that later as well. But ultimately, if they're over here shooting 93% Wizards, you can't shoot 85% at the free throw line, because that's one of the ways that you can slow the game down and get back in the game, make your free throws. And they didn't do that. So when you don't make your free throws, you can't afford to have the other team get 20 points off your 17 turnovers. You can't afford for them to double you up on the fast break, and you definitely can't afford for them to outscore you by 10 with points in the paint. So for me, it was, they didn't concede much because those numbers kind of looked the same, except those numbers kind of looked the same from a couple nights ago. So that's what I mean when I say didn't concede too much.
I don't know, Tenitra, if the Wizards are all of a sudden drinking the secret stuff that the Commanders are drinking, or like what's happening right now, to be honest with you. But they are literally punching the Hawks in the mouth. And this
Yeah.
looks like bully ball. This looks like a bunch of young guys who are not afraid of a more experienced team than they are. There was a
Mhm.
plethora of just play reviews, keep going back to the monitors, which I'm never necessarily in love with.
Mhm.
And just the fit from a physicality standpoint. Yeah, it's great that the Hawks had X amount of more, points in the paint where it looked like they were just dominating in a game where you definitely didn't have to beg for many dunks. It seems like every other game was a dunk. That's a huge problem for the Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion. Forget about the same stuff that you always do, a screen and roll, draw, the primary ball handler draws both defenders, and then you lob it up to Capella and whatever else, what have you. But you're not even able to get back on defense. We're still preaching about defense, for crying out loud. Congratulations on your first 2 wins against teams that you were supposed to beat, being the Nets and the Charlotte Hornets. But I want to dive into this just for a quick second, because this is how I'm really feeling, Tenitra. At
Yeah.
this tomorrow,
Mhm.
there's going to be a practice tomorrow. Coach DeShaun Tate had on, yeah, where there's going to be practice. First and foremost, okay, I am running the guys. You talked about shooting in practice. No, there ain't gonna be no shooting. There ain't gonna be no basketballs out there. That's how it's gonna be. The same way it was when I was growing up. There's gonna be nothing but 48 straight minutes of nothing but running. No basketballs, and I'm sitting in the middle of the court in a lawn chair drinking lemonade with shades on inside. Yes, that is correct. Even more so, all of the starters, every single last one of them, none of them are starting until the first commercial break against the Sacramento Kings. Every single last one of them, sit down. I'm bringing the other guys up off the bench. There won't be no music during practice when we're running. There ain't gonna be no special parking for the players up front and close at Emory and all that other kind of stuff. They're parking next to all the rest of the staff members. There ain't gonna be no cookies and desserts and all this extra stuff after practice and after games. We got to get rid of the cute stuff. I'm taking all the NBA apparel, anything with the NBA logo on it. We're not practicing in no official NBA shorts, no NBA socks, all this other type stuff. You get the Walmart brand stuff, because this is a privilege to play in this league. That's how I'm feeling about this team right now. They are so lucky that they got the coach that they got.
Yeah. But what you said resonates a bit, because it speaks to habits, and you're trying to break a bad habit from last season, which is not getting back on defense. So it's tough. It's really, really tough to kind of see those numbers play out as they did, but it's tougher because we know that that was the same issue that we saw over and over again. We would always see spurts where every player on that squad was playing defense. But there were rarely games where we saw D all 48 minutes. And there were rarely back-to-back games where we saw defense. So it's a little bit troubling. It's a little unnerving, because I'll tell you, DeShaun, I literally was in my car listening to the radio broadcast. And if I ever have to like run an errand when they're out of town and I'm listening to the radio broadcast, or if I'm headed home at halftime to do our post-game show, I'm always listening to Steve Holman. And at the end of the quarter, it was a 1-point game. DeShaun, I only have to walk 20 feet, maybe 30 feet from my car, take a minute to put the groceries down. I come upstairs and it's 115 to 100. Like, this can't happen. This cannot happen. And I think that's the concerning thing, where you have these runs. We know that the NBA is an association and a league of runs, but you can't have this happen. And you don't want to get back into that spiral. But hey, maybe it's injury thing, might be a thing. We'll discuss in the and one. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by Game Time, which has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Now, they give you priority with Game Time Picks. That's a curation that makes it easier for you to save more on everything from sports to comedy, theater, all of it. And there's all-in pricing. So it's toggling this feature that shows you the total upfront. So you're not going to have any surprises at checkout. Now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, of course, after you finish watching Locked On Hawks, the postcast, because what time is it? It is game time. So, DeShaun, we talked about this a couple nights ago because the reality is the injury bug is starting to hit, or I feel like it's starting to hit earlier and earlier each season, right? So tonight, no Dyson Daniels, right hip flexor strain. Again, no Bogdan Bogdanovic, right hamstring tendinopathy. DeAndre Hunter, right knee inflammation. Kobe Buffkin, right shoulder injury. No Beat Krejci, right adductor injury. So I have to ask you the question, just in all fairness, when we look at the result, if you don't have four of your top five guys, or arguably four of your really good ball handlers, you probably won't win a lot of games. So is there any credence, any possibility that you would give the injury bug, especially seeing how Dyson Daniels has performed and the impact that he's had on this team so far this season? Is there any credence that you give to the fact that, hey, he did not play tonight?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth when you mentioned Dyson Daniels, because that's exactly where I was going, not just from a defensive standpoint, but something we didn't expect, like we talked about many times already so far this season, the contribution that he's been able to pour in from an offensive standpoint as well. Number one, let me make sure I get this off my plate. None of which, any of these things is going to make a difference for Coach DeShaun Tate on tomorrow at practice. But as long as we got that part out of the way. But yeah, absolutely. And when you don't have any primary, I mean, it looks like this is a team that is built so that Trey can play 48 minutes. I mean, God forbid anything remotely close happens to what it did last year down towards the tail end, where he missed, I think, 25 or however many games that it was. Can't remember how many, but there has to be someone and something put in place. Maybe Tenitra Batiste is the person to ask, so we can see what the G League has to offer, bringing somebody up from the Skyhawks. If not, I hope they got a medium in the back. I mean, I'll be sucking wind the whole time, but I can give you a couple fouls and handle the ball somewhat decent. Let's give Tenitra a jersey, for crying out loud. I heard she's a pretty good ball handler. Something has to happen here. Like, this can't just be we let's be realistic, okay, Hawks fans. We fully anticipated the Trae Young show coming into this year, especially with the moves that were made or lack thereof. Like, make no mistake about it. If you thought that Trae Young was gunning before, you better believe, wait until you see this year. That has been my motto all year long. But there still has to be some times when you have somebody to come in and be able to give them a break, and that person can't only be Kobe Buffkin. Yes, he has looked better than what we expected out of Sharif Cooper so far in a very small sample size, but when he's sitting on the bench, that still equates into the exact same thing. So the one thing I will say is, if I did find some positivity outside of Trae Young looking significantly better than he did the other night, with Koulibaly, who just appeared to have his number, just looking like he was just playing a really good job defensively on him, has been David Roddy. And I know that he's not the primary ball handler type, but he is essentially what, Grant Williams has been for other teams, what Draymond Green kind of somewhat Swiss Army knife, big body, can control the ball, but not somebody you want to be your primary ball handler. He can bring it up and run a play. There needs to be another answer, and that's a big part of it, because the point guard is the quarterback in the game of basketball.
Yeah, I would say the same, because Trae Young was out at one point for like 80 seconds, and immediately it became a -6. So, when you look at that plus minus when he's out of the game for less than 2 minutes, that's scary, because you're right. We all know the points where he usually gets his minute or two of a break during a game. And if he's not able to do that and the wear and tear starts to happen, if these guys can't come back quickly, that is something that is of concern. But another thing that was of concern to me, because we do give credence to the energy piece as possibly the main reason that the Hawks fell, but then you kind of saw the energy lacking. it wasn't get back energy to me, because normally get back energy is like, I'm coming for your neck and I'm just going to stomp on your neck, and I'm going to do it until I'm going to run you out of your own building, basically.
Sure.
And I didn't see that kind of energy. I didn't hear that kind of energy tonight. It just seemed a little bit, I don't want to say sleepwalking, because I know some people said that on Twitter. I don't want to say it was that zombie-ish sleepwalking situation. But what did you think about the energy, especially a motivation, a mindset that should have still come, regardless of who was on the court, to get back at the Wizards?
Well, it wasn't there. And I know that we could talk about the lack of guys to be able to substitute into the game to be able to in order to present some different energy, and at least just bring some sort of a spark. Yeah. I wish we had something like a Muhammad Gay, if not nothing else, that was prepared and ready to be able to play. Don't know what his deal is, but I can promise you, once he can be consistent in the rotation to some degree, that we could be having that conversation. But we don't. And the reality is that I really believe that this team kind of like put themselves in, like they did it to themselves by not going to get other pieces and figuring this out. I mean, I know that I can't possibly be the only person that has really been feeling like when everybody else is making these moves and when it is, time for trade deadline, pushing up on that, or even NBA free agency, and everybody's looking around more and more each year. I sit back and say, I don't know why I'm keeping my phone so close and looking down at it every 2 seconds when I'm trying to eat dinner with my family. I don't know why I'm always trying to make sure I'm setting my alerts in case the Hawks end up picking up. They're never doing that. And there was at least a point in time, even when I ragged on this team last year, when I said that they needed to find a way to be able to bring in some more talented guys on the roster, because I didn't believe that the Collison Holiday brothers and some of these other guys were worth the doggone, to be honest with you. But they at least had bodies to be able to put in there and bring some sort of energy, whether that was just on the defensive end, whether it's just to be a game manager so that Trey can get a water break and put the towel over his head, or whatever the case may be. You don't even have the pieces now at this point. And don't forget, you may have made the best point of all over the course of this past week since the game has been started. We're in the first week of the NBA season. We are 5 games in, and we're already like, Tenitra, think about something for a second. I was literally just talking to you about I'm going to sit all of the starters and let other guys play, because the starters don't look like they care too much to even have some pride. I'm okay with losing, but not having pride. I don't even have guys on the bench healthy enough to even bring in. I got to call up guys from the G League or bring them over from the YMCA, who does a great job at sponsoring the team.
Yeah, and I hear you on that. That's a tough one, but what you did have was Onyeka Okongwu back on the floor tonight. Only 24 minutes for him, 24 minutes for Clint. You mentioned Mo Gay, and kind of he's in the middle, kind of a hybrid. He could be a big, but when I look at the bigs and Jonas Valanciunas.
Travis Kelce.
Right. But think about this. But doesn't Double O do pretty darn well when it comes to managing those bigs? Like, real talk. So I think that was something that maybe had me questioning or wanting to ask Quinn Snyder. When you look at the fourth quarter in particular, I wanted to look at the shot selections to just kind of see how the game got away from the Hawks, because it was only a 1-point game at the end of the third quarter. So the Hawks shot 17 times. So of those 17 shots, 7 were on the perimeter, but of the 10 they took inside, 5 of them actually fell, DeShaun. 5 of them fell. So do you think maybe Snyder could have played his bigs a little more to get back into the game versus maybe trying to shoot their way back into the game from deep?
I think so. One reason, because it was hungry hippo, feed me all night long in the paint. Shots clearly were not going down at the clip and the rate that you'd have liked it to. By the way, you don't have the guards nor the kind of the guys on the roster to be able to make me feel confident that if they're pulling up shot, like it's not like some random guy was hot. Like, yes, you have Veet I'm sorry, not Veet, but Garrison Matthews, who does a great job at shooting from three. But outside of that, you don't really have a whole lot to choose from.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I don't love the idea of trying to go for the three, pulling yourself back into a game that you never should have been trying to trail in from the very beginning. If you were to remember what happened 48 hours ago,
Yeah.
give it to Big O. Big O is the most versatile big, especially in comparison to Clint Capella that they have. Let him get in there and get some more touches. If somebody's going to be shooting a three, let him work on his if they're going to be needing him that bad throughout the season and other guys are not going to be playing.
Yeah, and I looked everywhere. I don't think I missed anything that mentioned load management for Double O. So I'll be interested to see where it goes from here. But hey, go back to Magic City. Somebody said that. Okay, shots fired. We'll talk about it in Who Got Next. So, DeShaun, what I was referencing is a tweet from our girl, Lauren Williams, who is the AJC Hawks beat reporter. Of course, she travels to cover every single game. So she tweeted, quote, "I think a Wizards fan told Jalen Johnson to go back to Magic City while he was at the free throw line." And she said that was very creative. I got to co-sign with Lauren. That was creative. That was creative. But for you, and I'll tell you mine first because I was asking you during pre-show and you were chuckling like, oh dang. And I thought about this new chant that I heard a couple nights ago, and it was from the Sixth Man or the FanDuel section of the arena, because of course they sit right there in front of the media, so we can kind of hear them fairly well. And we hear a whole lot from them that you probably don't hear on the broadcast, which is good because they say woo! But the one that really kind of got under my skin, or I guess made me laugh. It didn't really get under my skin. It was the taunting of Alex Sarr. Like, Alex Sarr could not move his foot an inch. He couldn't blink. He could not shake his head. On him. I can't repeat some of the things that they said about him, but it was definitely creative because they kept finding different ways to poke at this man. So I said, yeah, this is going to be an interesting back and forth. Don't know if anybody went in on Zaccharie Risacher in DC, if you will. But when Sarr comes here, it looks like that's going to be a little bit of jibbing and jabbing. But for you, creative thing that you have heard in the arena that made you kind of look twice the way I looked when I saw Magic City at the free throw line.
I don't know. I can't really think of much. I mean, me and you talked a little bit about this prior to I remember some things that had happened with, specifically on the collegiate side with Duke and North Carolina, where the whole the North Carolina Tar Heels fan base all got a hold of JJ Redick's telephone number. Like, so I know that that's not necessarily the same thing, but it is right around the same realm. And it literally got around to like everybody on campus. Outside of that, I won't mention who, but I do remember at one point in time some years ago that Michigan State went on the road to play somebody in an in-conference game. And I believe the rumor around Michigan State's team was that one of the players on Michigan State had been sleeping with one of his teammates' girlfriends or something along those lines. So there was definitely some chanting when the player who had gotten cheated on, I think it was. When that player went to the free throw line, they was chanting that guy's teammate's name who had, I guess, had taken his girlfriend. So I think, that one probably got pretty under the skin. And usually these professionals are pretty good about just kind of shrugging stuff off or not showing emotion. Like, I would have, like, just the way that this player was looking was like he could literally hear, like, nobody else was in the stands, just him at the free throw line by himself, and the whole crowd and fan base from the other team. So that's what I kind of remember most.
Yeah, that's a good one. At least funny for us, but poor, bless his heart, it wasn't funny for him, especially in the moment, right? But I mean, fans say and do some very, very interesting things, because of course we've all heard about the two fans that literally almost made Mookie Betts break his wrist when the Los Angeles Dodgers took on the New York Yankees in the Bronx last night. So fans, and we won't talk about some of the very egregious things, but in terms of like the funny things, it's like sometimes you're like, are you serious? Did you just say that? And I think at first, when those fans were trying to get the ball for a split second, it was funny because people saw them kind of leaning over. But when they saw what was really happening, it's like, oh my God, they might actually injure Mookie Betts. So yeah, you don't want anything crazy. But yeah, if the next time, if you guys are in the State Farm Arena Friday night, check out the 6-man FanDuel section because man, they definitely definitely give it to the opposing teams, and they already have their chance ready, by the way.
Oh, for sure. And Tenitra, to be honest with you, like that is partially what makes some of the in-game experience. Like, and just to show you how crafty and creative that that the fan base can be, is that like I've seen multiple times looking at my phone and I wasn't at the game and I'm thinking like, what are they saying? And then next thing I know, the notification comes up on my phone about some of the chants that they are saying. So like it must be a pretty big deal. And that has not happened just once or twice. Like that has happened multiple times. So it makes the game experience a lot of times. It makes it a little bit more fun and just getting up. And sometimes you even see the players kind of engage, from time to time.
Yeah, that's when it becomes funny too.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit funny because a lot of times, like I said, they're trained to be taught or what have you to kind of ignore stuff like that, almost as if they're not people and don't have ears. But I know that they hear some of that stuff.
Oh yeah, they do, because remember when the Hawks played the Bucks and they like started chanting in the arena, counting down or counting up, however you want to say it, to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Every time Giannis got to the line, the fans literally started counting 1, 2, 3, and it started getting to him. Like I knew he struggled at the free throw line already, but he particularly struggled a lot at the free throw line in that series. So yeah, fans, they can be a trip, but sometimes they can have little impacts on the game. Don't know if Jalen Johnson is going to hit Magic City when he comes back. I hope that he doesn't, because at the end of the day, I really kind of think that as much of a disciplinary action that you're giving the Hawks for tomorrow, I do think that they all kind of need to go back to basics and just get the basics right. Just kind of make sure the communication is there. What does it look like when the other team we were neck and neck and then all of a sudden the game kind of got away from us? Is it always a 3-point line? If we're shooting inside and we're shooting efficiently and effectively, it was 50% in the fourth quarter. Why not lean into that, slow the game down a little bit so that you can slow down their momentum? You could actually win. And that's something that you may need to see from these Hawks come Friday night if they expect to beat the Sacramento Kings.
Well, whatever you do, don't let us. I don't even know who the second-year guy is over there in Sacramento, but whomever this guy is, don't let this guy go crazy and have a career night against you when he's just this random role player, as we always like to say. Bilal Coulibaly came into this game on tonight for Washington, hitting a career high of 23 points, I think, against Cleveland, I think, the other night, one of his first 2 or 3 games of the season. Yeah, well, he just upped that career high by hitting 27 against the Hawks on tonight. By the way, didn't do a bad job on Trae Young, particularly in the last game and in the first half of this particular game. So, Bub Carrington, all these other guys, like these guys were out there looking like superstars, and they haven't even barely played a handful of NBA games yet. So the Hawks definitely still have some work to do. But I want to see what all this talk, I keep saying have some pride and whatever else. I don't know what's going to get through to them, but I tell you what, I'm not looking forward to Sacramento. If Washington did it, I'm not looking forward to Sacramento having 7 guys scoring in double figures in 48 hours from now.
Yeah, that's going to be a tall task, because we all know that Sacramento, usually, at least for last year, the Hawks might play them close in the beginning, but it kind of gets away from them. So that's kind of the one thing that I'd like to see from Quinn Snyder as well. Kind of what did the adjustments look like? Because that pesky third quarter is typically where you see the Hawks sort of give it away. This time it was the fourth quarter, but most of the time it's the third quarter. So I'm interested to see what kind of adjustments Quinn Snyder will make come Friday with the starting lineup, if you will. And granted, Dyson Daniels may be back. We don't know how long he's going to be out. So yeah, in that regard, he might have arguably his most consistent player so far this season back in the lineup, and that could make a difference. But yeah, if you're going up against De'Aaron Fox, and we all know what Kevin Huerter can do whenever he gets hot. But anyway, when you look at that entire team, they have so many shooters. But make sure, Hawks, you don't fall in love with the 3-point line. If the inside game is working for you, then work the inside game. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.